Welcome to another episode of This Week at Champlain, our very own student-run news show. This week we will take a look at Rock the Vote and the presidential election. We will then highlight the event which took place at the Champlain Gymnasium, featuring performances by Ashley Page, The Vitals, Silent Mind, The Villanelles, and the Latham Band. We will also speak with the Champlain students who were event planners and band members who really knew how to rock the vote.
One, two, three.
This is Patrick Garvey reporting for This Week at Champlain, here with Doug Tatro.
Hey Patrick, good to see you.
Good to see you, Doug. Can you tell me how you began the Rock the Vote?
Well, we started out throughout the whole semester with this project, and Rock the Vote was sort of the capulation to it. Toward the beginning of the semester, President Finney told the Center for Service and Civic Engagement under Nancy Cathcart's direction that he wanted to see a voter registration drive on campus. And so basically she took myself and another student, Evan Borden, under her ever-expanding wings and assigned us to this project. I dealt heavily with the voter registration process, where we set up registration booths throughout campus pretty much the whole semester. We held community events, bringing representatives and supporters of different candidates to campus to answer students' questions and things like that. We actually produced over 300 and something, I'm not quite sure the exact number, over 300 new registered people in Chittenden County. And we also made about 35 people notaries so they could register other people. And so Rock the Vote was sort of the ending piece of that. And so I dealt primarily with that, and the whole time while I was working with that, Evan Borden was working on some of the music with Rock the Vote and starting to get that set up. So he was sort of the primary on that. And he would help me with my initiatives or my projects, and I would help him with his. And so Rock the Vote ended up being sort of his side. He did the bands and things like that and all that kind of stuff. But we ended up working together just because it was the two of us on the overall voter initiative. So
I was thinking, I was like, oh wow, my great-grandmother would be really proud of me while I was voting today. I don't know. Your parents are probably pretty happy that you voted. It shows that you're responsible.
Can you tell me about how you advertised?
Well, yeah, and that's part of, and preparation was, you know, there was more to that too. I mean, Evan, we received funds from President Finney, and we thought it was, you know, this monstrous amount of money when we saw what it was, and you know, we were all excited. And then it came down to the budgeting, and that was the big problem, because to turn that gym into what it was for just that night was extremely expensive, and it was over budget. And so, in terms of planning, the planning was actually the most complicated part, and that part of that was preparing marketing and things like that. But the other part of it was also the budgeting and sort of the logistics. You know, we needed 5 bands, so that means, and all of these 5 bands were great bands, and they play gigs and they go places and they do things and they expect crowds. And so we sort of had the responsibility of producing a crowd, which we did for part of the night, but not all of it. And also we had the responsibility of having a good show. And so it costs $500 off the bat to put the floor down. And so we immediately ran into money problems. Evan was sort of back and forth with bands. You know, there was bands that came in late and things like that. And finally it all came together. And then during that time we started marketing Rock the Vote. And Rock the Vote's a national campaign. It happens on hundreds of campuses across the country. And it has been for a few years now. And so when we got to, I've totally lost my thought. When we got to marketing Rock the Vote, we marketed it as a national campaign. And so we had the 5 band things. We did it with posters. We had, at every event we had posters up. And we had new posters all the time. And we also invited the bands to do their own marketing on campus, off campus, because the event was open to community members as well. And so that's sort of how our marketing scheme worked. It was a lot of face-to-face marketing, a lot of sort of word of mouth, tell your friends, get them there, that kind of thing, and posters for whatever they're worth.
So can you tell me, do you think that the event was successful?
I think it was successful in one way and unsuccessful in another. We hoped for more students. It was obvious by the crowds. The beginning of the night, we had over 150 people in the room at one point, but that one point didn't last very long. And it wasn't even the band's fault. It was the lack of a crowd and sort of the length of it. You know, people would come for an hour and a half, 2 hours, get tired of standing, and they'd leave. And so a 5-hour concert is difficult to fill the whole time. So in that sense, it wasn't as successful as we'd like. But nevertheless, the whole project as a whole, I think, was a huge stepping stone for Champlain. I mean, I work at the Center for Service, and the amount of numbers we've been putting out and the amount of projects we've been putting out this year have been just growing and growing. You know, our tent city was double, our alternative spring break, twice as many people. This was the first voter initiation or voter drive, and so we got all these people and everything. So Rock the Vote was the first time we ever put so many bands on campus, and now we know we can do it. So we can have bands for other things besides Rock the Vote. And it was the first time that we showed President Finney directly from financing that he pushed to us, that we produced solid results, and we put on something very big for Champlain. So I think as a kickoff for hopefully an annual event or even biannual event, it'll start picking up because we're going to do it in November for the general election, and that's going to be even bigger. And then we'll do it for the Vermont Senate in 2 years. So it's going to keep growing over time, I think.
Excellent. Well, Doug Tatro from the Center for Service and Civic Engagement.
Thanks,
As
Patrick.
always, thank you, Doug.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for checking out This Week at Champlain, where our goal is to inform students of events happening in and around Champlain College. Next week, a champ sighting. We will feature the making of a PSA for the Vermont Lake Monsters. If you have any thoughts or suggestions for the content of our show, feel free to email us, champlainnews@gmail.com. I'm Patrick Garvey, and that's This Week at Champlain.